Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I'm your host, Cyril Gerald Quinn, recording this, of course, on a Tuesday, as we have just completed, in essence, the first month of the NFL season. Found out a few things about this season. Still, again, this is the preseason is officially over for the NFL. The preseason, so now, I think October. We start talking October, get around Halloween. The real season will in essence begin. Again, I'm not overreacting to this first month, but there were some very interesting things that transpired over the course of this first particular month of the NFL season. I'm going to title this episode "The Revenge of the Journeyman Quarterback." It's been a year for journeyman quarterbacks, especially in Minnesota. And also, Minnesota, Seattle, just to name a few who are out here just killing it right now. Tampa Bay, of course. So we'll talk more about that over the course of the podcast. But we begin with the game of the week, and we have to go to the college ranks for the game of the week. There were not any real compelling games, to be honest with you, in the NFL. I mean, I know there were some close games, but there was nothing that really stood out. And I was like, I was wondering, what is worthy of a game of the week, NFL wise. And I said, them watching Saturday night and what's transpiring Saturday night with Alabama, Georgia. Like, hey, what are you doing, Cyril? This is right there in front of you. Georgia falls to Alabama 41-34. A wild game, to say the least. Georgia has their 42-game regular season win streak snapped. Really, this run Georgia is on is really going to it's really, I don't think it's got the type of credit that it's deserved. I know there have been a lot of distractions in terms of what's transpired with college football, NIL, Colorado, this Deion in Colorado, and there have been other things going on. But this Georgia streak, this run Georgia has been on, has been just incredible. But Alabama was clearly the better team on Saturday. A very strange game. I don't know what to take from a game in where one team is down 28-0 before you blink, and then they finish the game on a 27-11 run and end up taking the lead late in the fourth quarter, which Georgia did. And you look at them saying, what, they're winning right now? If Alabama would have lost that game, oh my goodness. But the better team, Alabama was the better team on Saturday. Again, I don't know what to make out of it, take from that game, other than like the obvious that, Jalen Milroe is clearly, in the Heisman, obviously more than in the Heisman conversation. He's brought it to the top of the Heisman odds in terms of Vegas. Both of these teams are two of the 3 or 4 best teams in college football, and I would be shocked if they don't meet twice, maybe even 3 times, maybe even 2 more times later this season. Again, it was a hard game to read. It's a hard game, a lot of mistakes. The first half, Alabama played as well as you can possibly play. And there were parts of the second half where Georgia looked like Georgia. Carson Beck did not play well. He was awful in this game for the most part. 4 turnovers, 3 interceptions, clearly outplayed by Milroe. Now, again, he had in the second half, the fourth quarter, second half, he carved Alabama's defense up. Alabama's defense couldn't do anything with him, especially in that fourth quarter. But for the most part, he was very shaky. It looked like the game was too big for him. I was surprised at how Georgia came out, considering this is a national televised game. This is your arch nemesis. This has been the fly in their ointment, so to speak. Like, Georgia has 3 losses in the last 4 years. All of them have been Alabama. So like this, I guess I was confused. They're coming off a bye week. Both teams were coming off a bye week. I guess I was confused on how Georgia could have came out flat. Kirby Smart took it upon himself to say, hey, but basically the team wasn't prepared I didn't have him prepared the right way to play, which was something he should say as being the head coach leader of that program. But both again, I still think both. I don't walk away from this game thinking any less of Georgia than I did coming in to this game. Again, the game was at Alabama. We got to keep that in mind. So a road game in the SEC, it's not. But Georgia is fine. They dropped to number 4. I'm surprised they dropped that far. To be honest with you, dropped to number 5. I'm surprised they dropped that far. You easily could have kept them at 3 or 4, but it doesn't matter. It's a long season. Both of these teams will be in the playoffs. It's just a matter of where which one is going to be the SEC championship champion. I think that the SEC championship still goes through both Alabama and Georgia. Of course, Alabama now has a leg up, but their schedule is not easy. Georgia's schedule is not easy. It's going to be an interesting year in the SEC, which is still loaded, by the way. The SEC is still a loaded conference. We saw how loaded it is considering what transpired with Kentucky taking out Mississippi in Ole Miss, which, folks, hasn't happened since the year I was born, 1978. Okay. So that just shows you how deep the conference is from top to bottom. But a wild game in Alabama at Bryant-Denny Stadium in Alabama, and Alabama gets the win over Georgia 41 to 34. I'm gonna begin with the Kansas City. I'll begin this game. I'll go for worse. So I'll begin with Houston and Jacksonville. To no surprise, Houston wins this game 24-20 to 20. Now, Trevor Lawrence, look at these franchises clearly going in opposite directions, going in different directions. Houston goes to 3-1. Jacksonville falls to 0-4. Their season is in the tank. 0-3. The only good thing they've got, the only good thing Jacksonville has going for them is 3 of their 4 games have been played on the road. So they will get to kind of maybe make up some of that ground with a lot of home games. But the way they're playing right now, it doesn't matter where they play. They've been awful, to say the least. Now, we can look at the quarterback situation. Like, one team has C.J. Stroud, one of the best young quarterbacks in the league. The other team has Trevor Lawrence, who is looking like, along with Deshaun Watson, like it was like in Tua Tagovailoa, like buyer's remorse for those franchises who spent all that money, that franchise quarterback money on those particular guys. And by the way, you actually had to get those guys that amount of money. It's just all there is to it. The quarterback position is not deep right now in the NFL. Okay. So I don't have a problem with that. It's hindsight is 2020. If you're criticizing the money that Trevor Lawrence got, I'm looking at this franchise right now. Houston, we'll see where they end up. They're going to be. I think they'll be a playoff team. Can they take the next step? That's the question for them. But I'm looking at Jacksonville. I gotta be honest with you. I'm not by any stretch of imagination a Trevor Lawrence apologist, but when you look at these weapons or lack thereof, I mean, yeah, Travis Etienne Jr., nice running back, decent running back, cool. I'm fine with him. These receivers, Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas, Bretton Strange, like, what are we talking about? It's not, he doesn't have a lot. He doesn't have a lot. And I think the problem is, I look at Jacksonville, what is the identity of that football team? Who is Jacksonville? Like, I think from a personnel standpoint, they really haven't done a miserable job, a horrible job at establishing an identity. And, it's like the AFC is brutal. The AFC, like, you got to have weapons in the AFC. Like, look across the board. Like, look what, even Cincinnati. I know Cincinnati is only 1-3, but look at the weapons they have. We all know about Kansas City. We all know, about Baltimore. Just across the board with some of these teams in the AFC, you have to have weapons. And I don't Houston went out and got Diggs. I don't see it with Jacksonville. I just don't think the roster has a lot of talent. I mean, Houston has Diggs and Nico Collins. Like, one hand, you have Diggs. Diggs is their second receiver. Diggs by far and away. If Diggs were on Jacksonville, he'd be by far and away their best player, their best offensive player at the receiver position. By far. It's not even close. So you can kill Lawrence if you want, but the cupboard is kind of bare. And it's going to be hard to build upon those weapons with the amount of money that you paid them. They're going to have to knock it out in the draft. They should be in the mix for Davante Adams. I don't think Davante Adams will go there, but they definitely should be in the mix as far as because if you haven't heard, Davante Adams requested a trade from the Raiders. Shocker. But Jacksonville should be one of the teams that should be on the phone. Like seriously. That team that has a lack of weapons and is like I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel if you're a fan of Jacksonville. Ravens had their second straight impressive victory in a row, and this time they just totally manhandled the Buffalo Bills 35-10. This game was basically over like the first play from scrimmage. Travis Henry goes 87 yards on a night where he rushed for 199 yards on 24 carries. Baltimore just ran the ball right down Buffalo's throat. I mean, 34 carries, 271 yards. Only, Lamar Jackson, this is what you want. This is where you want Lamar Jackson. 6 carries, 54 yards. Perfect. Didn't take any major hits that I remember. Listen, I'm not going to knock Buffalo for this loss. Like, Buffalo came in 3-0. This is a home game for Baltimore. Baltimore needed to get right at home. After starting out 0-2, they had to redeem themselves after that Raider embarrassment a couple weeks ago when they blew two 10-point leads at home against the hapless Oakland Raiders. So give Baltimore credit. They've looked like a Super Bowl caliber team the last 2 weeks. Again, this is not going to be a weekly thing as far as they throw the ball only 18 times, run the ball 34 times. Most teams are not going to allow you to get away with that, but if you can, then so be it. I mean, when they run the ball and they realize you can't stop it, they're going to continue to run it down your throat. And like I said this a couple of weeks ago, even before the Dallas game, I believe I said this, Derrick Henry is the key to their offense. Now, it's going to be interesting. Derrick Henry had 24 carries. Derrick Henry in the last 2 games has look at here. Derrick Henry last 2 games, 49 carries for 350 yards. For his career, he's approaching 10,000 yards and 100 touchdowns. He's probably going to end up in the Hall of Fame. You get 100. It's hard to keep somebody out with 100 rushing touchdowns. 10,000 yards is one thing, but the 100 rushing touchdowns will probably put him in the Hall of Fame. He's one 200-yard game shy of the all-time record for most 200-yard games for a career with 7. I didn't think that Derrick Henry had this left in him, to be honest with you. Not to play at the level he's playing at. He currently leads the league in rushing right now. He's playing at an all-pro level. Again, I didn't see it. I thought Derrick Henry would be a nice pickup. I had no problem with it, but I did not see this coming whatsoever. Like, he's been dominant. He's been dominant for the last couple of weeks in particular. They got to be careful with him, though. He still has a lot of mileage on him. Has taken a lot of hits. I know the guy is a physical freak at 6'3", 250 pounds, does these ridiculous off-season training methods and what have you. I get it. But you want him fresh for December and January. I would keep his carry somewhere in that 220 or 250 range, to be perfectly honest with you, which makes Justice Hill that much more important, because I don't want Lamar Jackson taking a lot of hits and getting a lot of carries. So Justice Hill, You want Justice Hill to probably get anywhere from 10 to 12 carries coming, maybe in October and November. Take some of the pressure off Henry. 24, I know, again, 25, he has 25 and 24 carries. That's a little bit high, to be honest with you, this early in the season. I think October, I'd be very interested to watch how many carries he gets in the month of October and November. Again, Baltimore is going to be a factor in the playoffs. You want him fresh for the stretch run in December as you try to get home field advantage, and also when you get to the playoffs in January. But he is essential. He is outside Lamar. We know Lamar Jackson's the MVP, their best player, but he is vital for that offense. Vital. I'm not. And by the way, I'm not concerned about the receivers not getting a lot of touches. When you can run the ball for a gazillion yards like they had the last two games, I'm not worried about the receivers being in a rhythm. To be honest with you, they're like their receivers are okay to begin with. They're not great to begin with. Your Baltimore's game is predicated off physicality and being able to run the football. They're not going to win games because of their receivers. They have solid receivers, not great. So, but I don't care if I can run the ball for back-to-back games of 274 and 271 yards. Then you have to sign up for that. I mean, that's all there is to it. Vikings get a very impressive win over Green Bay, 31-29. This game was not as close as the score indicated. I know Green Bay made this miracle comeback, scoring 22 points in the fourth quarter. Vikings got sloppy with some turnovers and just, took their foot off the gas. But this game was never in doubt. It was 28-0. Green Bay, Minnesota clearly outplayed Green Bay from almost start to finish, with the exception of the fourth quarter. I get it. Sam Darnold continues to play great, dare I say, I would never thought that we would use the word MVP and Sam Darnold in the same sentence, but he is playing right now. I mean, he had an MVP in the first quarter. He would be amongst the leading candidates for sure. Minnesota, again, Minnesota right now has opened up. Not opened up. They have they're 4-0, playing extremely well. Obviously, that's a big road win on the road in Lambeau Field. Anytime you go in Lambeau Field, you're doing something. Jordan Love looked rusty. 32 of 54, 389. Did not 3 interceptions. I mean, I know he had the 4 touchdowns, but they threw the ball away. I mean, they had to throw a ball because they were down 1 million points. So I don't have a problem with play calling, but he looked like somebody that had missed the last couple games. Of course, he had that the MCL injury come off opening Friday. A few weeks back against the Eagles. He looked rusty. I'm not concerned about him, to be honest with you. And again, this is more about Minnesota than it was about Green Bay. So again, very impressive win for the Vikings. I'm not going to quite call them the class. I still think Detroit is better from top to bottom. But listen, Minnesota, has these. They're extremely well coached right now. Kevin O'Connell is coaching his ass off in terms of the stuff he's doing with Sam Darnold. Let me tell you something. There are a number of journeyman quarterbacks that I would have chosen over Sam Darnold to possibly have a comeback year. He would not be on the list. He would not have made my list. I thought that guy was cooked. I thought that there's somebody that I wouldn't even want on my team. I shouldn't say that. It shouldn't be that harsh. Because there's just not that many quarterbacks as it is. But I was not buying Sam Darnold stock coming into this season, trust me. So you give all the credit in the world to the coaching of Kevin O'Connell. Done a phenomenal job with coaching Sam Darnold up and having him play at this particular level. Finally, Kansas City does what Kansas City does, 17-10 over the LA Chargers. Now 10-0 at one point. The Chargers scored 10 points in the first quarter and don't score for the rest of the game. It's gotten to a point, right, where I think I had to take a step back with Kansas City. Kansas City improved, has won now, going back to last season, 10 straight games. 9 of those games have been decided by one score. The only game that was decided by more than one score, of course, was the first wild card game against Miami last in the playoffs. They've only outscored their opponents by a total of 20 points this year. They held the Chargers, like I said, scoreless after the first quarter, and to a total of 224 yards. Listen, the Chiefs are playing chess. Everybody else is playing checkers in the NFL, and I'm telling you why. So let's go back to the Tyreek Hill trade of 2000 of like what was it, March of 2022. It'll be almost 3 years. Come next year. Come next March, right? Everybody's like, "What are you doing? What are they doing?" They were coming off a playoff loss, a devastating playoff loss to Cincinnati, blowing like a 21-point lead in the conference in the AFC Championship at home. Remember that, right? So they trade Tyreek Hill, and me and myself and Robert Sepp got into argument about what they were doing. Even myself saying that, hey, I agree with the move. I can see what they're doing. I still didn't see completely what they were doing. And you think about it, like I saw part of it, but I didn't see the entire picture of. I didn't see. I didn't see the depth. I didn't see it to the depths that I realized what they were doing as of right now, on this October 1st. They were, in essence, you look at how much money. You go to their contracts, right? Who are the highest paid Kansas City Chiefs? Obviously, Mahomes is number one. So you have Mahomes in terms of average per year, right? Average salary per year. Mahomes, the quarterback. Chris Jones, defensive tackle, one of the best defensive players in the league. Joe Thuney, guard. Jawan Taylor, right guard. Creed Humphrey, center. Kelsey, tight end. Justin Reed, safety. Harrison Buckner, kicker. So they're 1, 2, 3, 4. They're 8 highest paid players. None of them are wide receivers. None of them. Right? So we have the all-world quarterback. We have the Hall of Fame coach. We have one of the top kickers in all of football, the best kicker right now. We're going to stack our defense and offensive lineup. And they've nailed the draft. They absolutely have nailed the draft in terms of some of the guys that they've drafted over the past since the Tyreek Hill trade, not counting the compensation that they got from the Tyreek Hill trade. And they've, in essence, allowed themselves to master winning these close games, these one-possession games, because either Mahomes is going to make a play or you're going to make a mistake. One or the other is going to happen, if not both of them. And unlike last year, when Mahomes, like right now, Mahomes, he has pedestrian stats. He only has 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and he's averaging by far a career low 226 yards per game through 4 games. Not in the least bit concerned about their offense. Defensively, they rank 7th in scoring defense. They're on pace to have another top defense. So they've mastered this art, this way of, in terms of winning these games like this. This is not by accident. And they made this transition knowing what the NFL is going to look like. If you look at the NFL right now, there's more parity in the NFL right now than there's ever been. There's no dominant team. Like there's no team that's running roughshod over the league right now. Even as far as talent goes, there's some teams that have more talent than others. So what you have to be able to win close games. You have to. You got to be able to win close games. You're not going to run through everybody. It's just not going to happen. Like those days of the 93 Cowboys, the 84 49ers, 91 Commanders, then Redskins. And you're never going to see that anymore. Those days are done. They're done. So we can't be a dominant team, but what we can be is a team that is just ahead of it. It's just smarter than everybody else. Like there's no team. They are at where New England was at in their heyday. They're just smarter. And if you notice, I'll make the parallel. Hall of Fame coach, great quarterback, a bend but don't break defense. that made plays when they had to make them. And those teams, those New England teams, look at those Super Bowl scores. Look how many close playoff games they won, especially in the Super Bowl. It was a stretch where they were winning all the Super Bowls by, a field goal, with a game-winning field goal. Matter of fact, if you look at New England, with the exception of the Rams Super Bowl, all their Super Bowls are basically one-score games. All of them, with the exception of the Rams one. And that game was close in the fourth quarter. That wasn't a blowout. All their Super Bowls were by 3 points or one-score games. They mastered the art of winning close games. It was not, and again, this is not, when this keeps happening the way it's happening, this is not by accident. This is not by accident, not in the least bit. Now, if you can't see, the injuries are starting to pile up. Marquise Brown, Rasheed Rice, Pacheco, those are three key players off their team, offensively. So, we'll keep an eye on that. But right now, like I said, they are playing at a whole different level as far as they're playing the long game. They are proving that, they have the best record right now, but they are proving that they can go anywhere, anytime, and win. Go anywhere and win anywhere, anytime, anywhere. Like they are proving that. But again, how you're seeing them win these games, please don't fall into the trap in thinking that they're vulnerable. They're not vulnerable. And as long as Patrick Mahomes is upright and the offensive line is relatively intact, they're not vulnerable. Like Spagnuolo as a defensive coordinator, makes some of the best adjustments in the league, especially in the second half, in the fourth quarter, second half, third, especially in the fourth quarter. Like he's just a master of that. Let's go to the deep dive. I want to shift gears a bit to the NBA, which preseason is coming. The preseason is upon us. Will be, I think, tipping off Friday. You have a number of teams that will be overseas. I think Boston, the Lakers, those teams. You'll get a first look at some new faces and new places. And speaking of that, now this trade has not been finalized, but it's going to happen. Late Friday night. I was knocked out Friday night, by the way. I didn't even get the breaking news that this trade. I did not know about this trade until early Saturday morning, having a zillion texts. Minnesota will receive Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, a first round pick from Charlotte, which, from the Hornets, via Detroit. New York, of course, gets Karl Anthony Towns. Listen, this is a very interesting trade to say the least. Everybody, it's funny about this trade. Everybody either loves it, I don't know anybody that loves it. People either like it or hate it. It's not exactly clear cut in terms of who won the trade by most people's standards, how most people gauge it. I'm telling you right now, I clearly think that the Timberwolves won the trade. I just a couple of reasons. Number one, I think the Timberwolves realize this, that they were not going to go get to the NBA Finals with Karl Anthony Towns as your second best player. I just think that they came to sometimes they had they had an epiphany. They were not going to wait, go another year with Karl Anthony Towns. He was awful in that series. I know Edwards didn't play well, but Towns, Towns cannot be your second best player. And I don't think you can win a championship with Karl Anthony Towns as your second best player. The best player. The key part of this trade, to me, is Dante DiVincenzo. Dante DiVincenzo last year was was great in the playoffs. He's a guy that's fearless. He's a guy that can play multiple positions. He can shoot the hell out of the ball. He is tough as nails. I love DiVincenzo's game. It's a big loss for the Knicks. It's a big loss for the Knicks. And I'm surprised. I understand that they were desperate for a big man. Mitchell Robinson, who knows when he's going to come back? They're talking about December, but even when he does come back, he can never stay healthy. Hardenstein, you lose him to free agency with Oklahoma City. Was a big loss. And they probably, you can try to convince yourself like, hey, Pat is a 4-time All-Star. He's been All NBA 3 times. He's one of the best shooting big men in the league. Like, you can sell, if you really are semi-delusional, you can sell yourself on Karl-Anthony Towns' playoff experience, bringing him home to the nearby, the Jersey area. He played his high school basketball in New Jersey. So it's not hard to sell yourself on Karl-Anthony Towns. It's not. And by the way, that first round pick is via Detroit, not Charlotte. Let me get that correction. Which again, that could be another trade asset for Minnesota. So you can sell yourself on Cat. I just don't see it with Karl-Anthony Towns. First of all, the fit. I'm fine with the fit. So I don't think he'll be hard to fit in. I don't think it'll be chemistry issues. I just don't trust him in big spots, especially in the Eastern Conference. Like, the Eastern Conference is loaded up, especially up top. Philadelphia. Milwaukee's going to be much better than what people expect them to be. Boston's Boston. Okay? Like, I think this was a panic move by the Knicks. I think the Knicks should have been more patient. Again, you don't need a big man. The Knicks didn't need scoring. They just needed a guy that can, rebound, block shots, control the paint from a defensive standpoint. They didn't need a guy that can score. They have enough scoring. But now they're lacking depth. And DiVincenzo was a big player. Man, DiVincenzo hasn't played big minutes last year in the playoffs. Played big minutes last year in the playoffs. The flip side, if you're Minnesota, right, you add, listen, Julius Randle, we know that Julius Randle has had, as I look for, look at Minnesota's roster now. Look at Minnesota's roster. Okay. Got a starting lineup of, you got Edwards. It'll probably be Conley, Edwards, Jay McDaniels at the small forward, Randle at the power forward, and of course, Rudy Gobert at the center. You still have Naz Reid. You have Naz Reid, DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I mean, that is a great top 8. That's a great top 8 to have. We know Ant is on the ascension, is ascending. Randle doesn't have to be the guy. Doesn't have to own that team. Doesn't have to be the guy on that team. They have a lot of they have some guys that can score the basketball. If Randle can stay healthy, I think Randle can, can put up some numbers and can fit well in that with that team. And more importantly, you're not asking Randle. Again, Randle's had playoff, just like I have to be fair about it in terms of playoff struggles. Randle has even been worse than Cat. Let's be honest with some of his playoff struggles. But remember, that was when he was the guy on the team, as far as from a scoring standpoint, when he had to carry more of a bigger load. That's not going to be nowhere near the case. Anthony Edwards is clearly the number one by far and away, and they have a lot of balance. You have some guys. You have Jay McDaniels can score the basketball. You have Naz Reid can score the basketball. You have DiVincenzo that can score the basketball. Okay, so you have guys that can score the basketball where you don't have to be a clear cut. Like, we're not saying Julius Randle has to be even a clear cut number 2 on that team. Now, question is, Randall wants to get paid. That'll be a decision for 2025. We'll see how to, like, you win a championship or you get to the finals. It's like, you probably have to pay him. But if you don't, then you can move him. You can flip him with that draft pick. So you have some flexibility if you're Minnesota. But you could not come back with the same team as you did last year. I just don't think Minnesota could afford to come back with that same team. And then I just don't, I think they did absolutely the right move. They get off that Towns contract. Let me just show you how the Towns contract. Let me look this up real quick. Towns still is going to make $49 million this year. He still has 4 years left on his contract. So Towns, 24 this year, $49 million. 2025, $53 million. 2026, $57 million. So you're paying a guy like a number one who, I can make a case that I'm looking at Towns, looking at their roster right now. Is Brunson's clearly their best player. I guess Towns is. I guess from a talent standpoint, Towns is your second best player. But I mean, you got Anunoby, Bridges. So I guess Towns is your second best player. But I'm looking at this Knicks team. You have a lot of fragility. The depth is not the same. Anunoby is injury prone. Towns has been injury prone of late. Okay, we already know Mitchell Robinson. He's already injured. Right, he's injured right now. They don't have a lot of depth on this team. I'm concerned about the depth. Again, I think this goes against this. This to me looked like a James Dolan move. Like this goes against how they've been moving, how the Knicks have been moving the last few years. This it came off as a panic move, to be honest with you. A little bit of a panic move. I don't think you had to make this move. I don't. I totally get why Minnesota made it. I actually think you bailed Minnesota out. Because I don't think that Towns, if they couldn't get, this was probably the best possible package that Minnesota was going to get for Towns. Like you get DiVincenzo, a first round pick, and a guy who averaged 24 and who's been All NBA himself and has had averaged 24, 10, and 5. I don't think you could have got. I don't think Minnesota could have got a better deal for Karl-Anthony Towns. I didn't think there was a great market for Towns, to be honest with you. So I think Minnesota really, Minnesota to me clearly won this deal. Now when they put them in the finals, we'll see. Looking at the Randall money, yeah, Randall's a free agent after this year. Like his contract is up after this year, so they'll have a decision to make. But again, they're not stuck with his money. And Randall's last year was 24, 9, and 5. So he wasn't 24, 10, and 5, 24, 9, and 5, but still very impressive numbers. So we'll see what happens. Panic move for Minnesota for the Knicks. I like the move for the Timberwolves. Who won the week? Jalen Milroe. He was spectacular in the Alabama-Georgia game, which is the biggest game up to date in this college football season. Now, in 2 years, he's 2-0 against Georgia. 6 touchdowns, only one. He's accounted for 6 touchdowns and 1 interception. He is, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, he is squarely atop the Heisman Trophy odds. He's the Vegas favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. He jumped everybody with that performance on Saturday. The interception wasn't his fault. I think it was like a tip pass or something like that. So a freaky play, to say the least. He was like, you're talking about 374 yards throwing the ball over 100 yards rushing. He completely controlled this game and was the difference in this game, to be honest with you, as Alabama held on for dear life as they fell apart defensively in the second half. It was that 28-0 cushion, that kind of stable set the tone for the entire game. And he was the best player, absolutely the best player on the field. A couple of major deaths in the world of sports, especially in the entertainment period. There's been a lot of death lately in the last couple of weeks. We lost some legends, to say the least. Pete Rose passes away at the age of 83. Rose, of course, the all-time leader in hits. The all-time leader in games played, and the all-time leader in plate appearances. Those are three records that probably will never be broken. He's 17-time All-Star, 3-time world champion. The only man in hit, right? Only man in history with 4,000 hits. I think, is he all-time leader in hits? Let me see. Is he all-time leader in terms of 4,000 hits? Maybe there's two people with 4,000 hits. I'll look that up. But here's the bottom line about Pete Rose. I think Pete Rose's legacy is kind of similar, a little bit similar to one Bobby Knight. You have to look at the entire totality of by the way, Ty Cobb also has 4,000 hits. So let me stand corrected on that. So Pete Rose on one or two players with 4,000 hits. Ty Cobb is the other. They both played 24 seasons. And here's the thing with Pete Rose. Of course, we know Pete Rose, of course, has been permanently banned from the Hall of Fame for gambling on baseball. It took him 15 years to admit that he actually did gamble on baseball. Now, whether or not, if he would have admitted earlier, who knows if that would have made a difference between him getting the Hall of Fame. I think it might have made a difference, but probably not, considering that he's on the ineligible list. And it's not, again, it doesn't matter dead or alive that he was not, based on this rule, he will never be in the Hall of Fame, never even be on the ballot, on the ballot to get into the Hall of Fame. Pete Rose, they say in light, Frank Sinatra has a song, My Way. I would say Pete Rose did it his way instead of doing it the right way. I would say Pete Rose played baseball the right way, and he lived life his way. And there's a price to be paid when you do things your way versus the right way. And there was a lot of so off the field, I was talking about a guy who, again, he didn't commit. I mean, it's not O.J. Simpson here as far as killing people and stuff, things of that nature. But this guy was like all of us are flawed. But this guy was, he wasn't the greatest guy off the field. Let's be honest. Even up to a point of 2022, how he treated the lady reporter, calling her babe after she asked him a perfectly legit question about, basically him committing statutory rape back in in 1973, sleeping with an underage girl, which, by the way, happened because he didn't deny it. He says he didn't say that didn't happen. He basically said, "Why are we bringing this up 55 years later? Nobody, you weren't born about it." Just insulted her. Apologize if you want to call it an apology, but he was a guy who could not get out of his own way, and I think that the thing that made him great probably contributed to his downfall and his not getting to the Hall of Fame. That competitiveness nature that he had on the field, played every game like it was his last. Did not cheat on the field. He did not cheat the game at all. On the field, you cannot. His greatness cannot be denied. He was an overachiever. He was not. We're not talking about Vladimir Guerrero, Alex Rodriguez, Ken Griffey Jr. physical ability. He didn't have that. Didn't have that at all. Now, slightly above average athlete in high school, had some great, he they said he was good in football in high school, but we're not talking about. You look at Pete Rose, you don't see just this. You look at Ken Griffey Jr. at the age of 19. You said that's a physical specimen. You look at Alex Rodriguez at the age of 19. That was a physical specimen at the age of 19. 6'3", 220 pounds, and just this super athlete. That was not Pete Rose. Pete Rose was a technician. He outworked you. He wanted to win more than you did. That's how Pete Rose became great, and he was consistent. So he got what he deserved based off the choices that he made on the field. Got what he deserved. He was a winner, 3-time champion, helped the Phillies win their first World Series in 86 years, was a vital part of that great Cincinnati Big Red Machine, along with Joe Morgan and Johnny Bench and Juan Concepcion and some of the great players that they had, led by, of course, the legendary, the late Sparky Anderson. So on the field, he got what he deserved. But you know what? Off the field, he got what he deserved. He lived his life. He was reckless. He was reckless. A guy who cheated on his wife, tax evasion. I mean, he did this cavalier attitude. Basically thinking that he was untouchable. This ego that got in the way. That may have gotten in the way of him getting to the Hall of Fame. So, like I said, he lived life the right way and his way. And you got and that equaled out to him being one of the great, him being an all-time great baseball player, but also him being not in the Hall of Fame right now. He does not deserve to be in the Hall of Fame based off the rule. Now, you want to say based off his ability, sure, but the point is he gambled on baseball. You gamble on baseball, get caught, you're out of baseball. You're not getting to Hall of Fame. It's just that simple. That's the rule. That's it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's no debating it to me. There's no debating it. And the fact that he could not acknowledge the fact that it took him 15 years to acknowledge that he bet on baseball shows you what type of character that he had when it came to just him being tone deaf and just a complete lack of self-awareness. Again, similar to Bob Knight, we have to give the complete story, the totality of his life. We can't just focus on one aspect. It wasn't all terrible. It wasn't all great. We have to give the complete story when we discuss the life of Pete Rose, those 83 years that he had on this earth. And to be honest with you, I don't ever think he was sorry for gambling on baseball. I think he was sorry that he got caught. I don't think he did anything wrong. To be perfectly honest with you. Again, it's a life lesson. It's a life lesson. Doing things your way versus doing things the right way. Just think about that for a second. Let that marinate. You can do it your way or you can do it the right way. In his case, he did it both. It benefited him on one hand and he paid the price on the other. Before I let you go, I'm going to end the program discussing another sports related death. This one was way too soon. Pete Rose was 83 years old. Dikembe Mutombo died passed away of brain cancer at the age of 58, which is way too soon, way too young for anybody to go. Mutombo is in the Basketball Hall of Fame. Mutombo is one of the few one-dimensional players who I feel like is deserving of the Hall of Fame because he was so dominant as a defender, as a defensive player. He was a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. He had 8-time All-Star. He finished top 3 in Defensive Player of the Year. It wasn't 8-time All-Star. He had 8 straight seasons where he finished top 3 in Defensive Player of the Year. Of course, won 4 times. Mutombo, I think Mutombo probably doesn't get enough credit, to be honest with you, in certain aspects of his career. There were 3 signature moments of his career between college and pro. College in 1991 right? He's on that team. Okay, Georgetown team. They were, I believe, an eighth seed, and they're going against this powerful UNLV team in 1991, which was up to that point undefeated and seemed to be unbeatable. Of course, we know Duke in their undefeated season, their hopes of a back-to-back national championships with that one of the great upsets of all time in Final Four history in '91. But round of 32, Georgetown holds that powerful UNLV team to 62 points, of course, led by Mourning and Mutombo. Not a great Georgetown team. I remember that game. They like defensively. I mean, UNLV couldn't do next to anything. I mean, UNLV was putting like 90 and 100 on people like it was nothing, and they only scored 62 points against that team. In that game, outside Larry Johnson, Mutombo was the best player on the floor in that particular game. To be honest with you, 16 points, 9 rebounds, 3 block shots. So he has that moment. We fast forward to the NBA, 1994. He's 27 years old. He leads Denver to an upset to the first number 8 seed to take out number 1 seed in that 94 playoffs. That was a powerful supersonic team. That's Sean Kemp, Gary Payton, a young Sean Kemp, a young Gary Payton. That was a loaded supersonic team that they beat in 5 games. And you see him embracing the ball. Pictures that I have on my slides here of him embracing the ball. Now, in that series, right, he averages 12 points, 12 rebounds, and 6.2 blocks. He almost leads them to a second upset against Utah, where they were down 3-0 and ended up forcing a game 7. Doesn't get enough credit for that particular playoff run. He was on course the 2001 Sixer team that went to the finals, led by Allen Iverson. He was the second best player on that team. His other signature moment came in the 2001 All-Star game. Now, this was one of the most exciting All-Star games in recent memory. I'm about to look it up now because it was a tremendous game. Now, what people remember about that game is the West was up 1,000,000 points. Not 1,000,000 points, but West was up by a lot. And the East comes back and wins the game. Everybody will talk about what Allen Iverson and Stephon Marbury did. And of course, Marbury and Iverson was spectacular in that game. Mutombo to me changed the complexion of that game with his defense. He locked down Tim Duncan, and we're talking about a Tim Duncan that was in his prime. I want to look up the game now. Now I'm curious in terms of what what numbers he put up. But in that game, he was absolutely like from a defensive standpoint, he completely changed the complexion of that game. And that was look at the Western Conference. Look at the Western Conference roster, right, in that game. Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, Michael Finley, Kevin Garnett, Jason Kidd, Karl Malone, Antonio McDyess, Shaq, Gary Payton, David Robinson, Rasheed Wallace, and Chris Webber. East had Ray Allen, Vince Carter, Antonio Davis, Grant Hill, Allen Houston, Allen Iverson, Marbury, Anthony Mason, Tracy McGrady. Yeah, so it wasn't as one size I thought it was. But he was absolutely spectacular in that particular game, especially down the stretch when again defensively. And I want to actually look up. I want to see what that the box score of that game. But he really changed the complexion of that game with his defense. Allen Iverson ended up being the MVP. The East won 111 to 110. Again, that was a game where they actually played defense in the fourth quarter. Like they actually were playing like it. They were playing it like it was game 7 of the NBA Finals in that fourth quarter. At a time when they actually took the All-Star game seriously. Yeah, seriously, I mean, Mutombo again. No, this Mutombo easily could have been Mutombo. Mutombo had 6 points, 22 rebounds, 3 blocks, and 2 steals. Easily could have been the MVP of that game. Easily. Like, he had the biggest impact of that game. He, like, 22 rebounds, 3 blocks. He was, like I said, he dominated that fourth quarter of that game. And again, Duncan, 5 for 11, 14 points. Okay. So you said Duncan had 14 points and 14 rebounds. So, but still, that again, he's going up against Duncan and Kevin Garnett and Chris Webber. So, those were his signature moments. He had signature moments over the course of his career. And you know what? I'll say this. You know, he accomplished a lot basketball wise, but this was a guy who was beloved by everyone around the league, respected by everyone. The guy who did nothing but give off the court. You know, had building hospitals, built hospitals in his whole country. He was a highly intelligent guy who spoke 4 languages, spoke 5 African languages. He went to Georgetown to become a doctor. Okay, but you know, ended up playing basketball and changed his major. So this was a well-rounded human being. And again, 58 is, brain cancer. 58 is way too young, just going too soon. But it was certainly somebody again who had not only a Hall of Fame career, but lived a Hall of Fame life. So rest in peace to the late and great Dikembe Mutombo. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. Of course, you can catch this podcast anywhere where podcasts are available. I will see you next time. I might do a mini podcast on James Amos, John Amos, James Amos. I got the names mixed up. Combine his real life good times with real life. But I might do a mini podcast on either Instagram Live on John Amos, the late great John Amos, but because he's way too important to the culture with the iconic character that he played on Good Times for me just to squeeze him in. Of course, he just passed. It just was announced he passed away. He died on August 21st, and his family just let it out today. In essence, so I mean, of course they couldn't predict that who was going to die, but certainly not the greatest timing to announce a death, considering how many of our legends have passed away in just the last 2 weeks. But anyway, we will pay our respects to the late and great John Amos later on in the week. So stay tuned for that. This is the Real Deal Podcast. And of course, next week will be the season 17 premiere of the Real Deal Podcast. Have a great rest of your week. So long.